Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Josh Tepper Show. I am Josh Tepper. And today we're going to be talking about how to transition from a friendship when the mask comes off and how do you heal. Now, again, I don't want to take credit for this idea. It is a dear friend of mine's idea who has helped me so much through dealing with narcissistic relationships, which has been such a theme in my life, and I am processing and really navigating really more seriously why this has popped up in my life, what it means, and why I've gone through it, because I do believe that God, everything happens for a reason, and that God puts things in your lives for a specific reason. So I am here to process and speak and learn, and if you're here and if you're hearing this, let's do this together. So yes, I've had many friendships where I really thought that someone was like close to me, and then their mask comes off and you see them for who they really are, which is pretty much always the same: a very angry, insecure, envious human being. And it's a little surprising because when the way they lure you in is usually by being very quote unquote cool, collected. They have this charm about them. They seem to be very confident, and they love bomb you. So you think, oh my gosh, this person gets me, they understand me, they want good for me. And in reality, they just want to manipulate you. So I don't know. So usually for me, I've experienced the mask coming off. It's usually in times of rage. You either don't do something the right way or the way they think is right, you quote unquote let them down, or you simply just don't do what they say. That's usually what it comes down to. I mean, I had a friend who I did a gap year with, and actually, I have a better example. I had this really interesting friend who I met in college, and she was really, really cool. She was a photographer, or seemed to be cool. She was a photographer, she was physically attractive, did have a very creative mind, but ultimately was a narcissist and wanted to be in control of everything, even though that's not the demeanor that they were putting out originally. And the way that their mask started to slip a little early on, but when their mask really came off is she had invited friends over to my home without asking me for Halloween. I wanted to have a small get-together, a pre-game, and then we were going to go out. The issue with the people she had invited, I didn't know them that well. They had Molly on them, they had cocaine on them, and I did not want that in my home. And again, it wasn't like a moral high ground, meaning, I'm against drugs. It wasn't that, but the apartment which I was renting was in my father's name, who is a doctor, and I was concerned that if someone were to mix those drugs or have a bad reaction, that could affect my father's license. And she knew my dad was a doctor, and so I said to this specific person, I said, hey, it's not an issue about using drugs this evening, because that's not where I'm getting upset about. It's that I don't want these people in my apartment. I said I will meet them anywhere. We can go to any party you want to go, any bar. I just can't have them. We can have fun in my apartment before and meet them. They cannot come to my house. And she was like, well, that's just too bad. Not saying, okay, let's figure this out, let's compromise. That was her. It was basically, she was like, it was her way of saying, you don't do what I say. I could tell. It was like, I'm not going to be happy about it. And I got up and I left. And right before that, and I'm not going to say what it was, well, I'll say it. She had said, oh, these guys are coming, and these are my sexy friends. And to another guy, that's very insulting. So she was just, the minute I kind of said, no, I'm not dealing with what you want, she insulted me, and I walked out. She sent me crazy text messages And honestly, that's when our friendship ended, because that mask came off. She started to go crazy on me, and I'm like, okay, this is not a friend. You don't care. No, actually, no, yeah, you don't care about my boundaries. And that's what it comes down with these people. They do not respect your boundaries. And this was someone who I'd gone out with many times. We had many, 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 I would say, quote unquote, magical nights in Manhattan. I do have a lot of fond memories of our times together. So I try to look back on it now in a positive way. But it was very hard for me to understand that the relationship could not move forward. And that was hard, because I really thought that this was a real friend of mine. So that's just one example. And it was a hard transition for me, because I'm someone who has I don't want to say I'm selective, but I connect with very few people. So when you find people that you have a connection with, and then it's just totally, cut, and even when you try, like, later to explain yourself or try to say, hey, let's work this out, she was not receptive, and that was very that made me really unhappy. So but I hadn't had the language or the understanding of this cycle. So that's just one example. Another example is someone who I worked with, and I guess we could say that we had a friendship, and we had a couple of episodes, and I was unfortunately in her cycle for a long time. She was a boss. Well, I don't want to say a boss. I worked with her, and one day, earlier that day, she was going to Paris with her then, we'll say, male companion who she sleeps with. He took me out into the hall, sat me down, and kind of was like, you need to be doing more, you need to know your place of who and where you fall. Mind you, this was an unemployed person from the middle of nowhere who was using his girlfriend's credit card. So we see the person that was talking to me. And in the meanwhile, someone in my family was having major health issues. So I was just like, I cannot believe this is happening. So I went to go see my family. There was actually something very important happening, and I'm getting crazy phone calls and text messages because I forward an email without maybe writing something. It was something so ridiculous. I forwarded she said, can you send this to someone? Which I thought, okay, I will forward it. Just forwarding an email led to one of the biggest adult meltdowns I have ever experienced. Calling me a motherfucker, using profanities like you don't know, sending me the most incredibly offensive text messages. I hung up on her, and that was still getting insane messages over an email being forwarded. And what was hard about that at the moment is that, this is all I had. I was out of college. This is my new job. I had been working really hard. And now I'm being treated like a piece of garbage. And I ended up quitting that day. Unfortunately, that person would not let me go and, weaved their way into my parents' lives, and I ended up going back, and things in the beginning were fine, and then they started doing pitting me up against other people, and what ultimately led me to leave this position was not only did she start comparing me to people who she had just met and just brought onto her team after loyalty and hard work. It was her boyfriend's, her boyfriend's birthday, then fiance. Now they're not together, and there are these cakes you can get from that have M&Ms and sprinkles come out. I think it's called. I'm gonna actually find the name. I think it's called Sprinkle. What's it called? Just so for those who are listening can understand. I think it's called Sprinkle. Sprinkle. I think it's like those cakes from Sprinkles. And it's called Flower Shop. It's the Flower Shop cake, and all this bunch of crap comes out, and kind of like the Big Bang, like all this shit comes out, and or anyway, I guess I had been sick, and I got the cake that was normal. This led, and by the way, it was Friday. I'm like barely being paid for this job, and this human is having a meltdown over a fucking cake. So you feel gutted because you put 100 and like I was putting 100,000% into this job, and one little fucking thing over some guy who you don't even love. You're gonna yell at me over some cake? So these are examples of when the mask falls off and you just feel like you don't know what to do, because what they do is they manipulate you, that they become the center of your universe. And when something goes wrong and they kind of pull the rug from under you, it's very scary because you're like, oh shit, I made a mistake, and now I feel like I've lost total control over like my whole life is falling apart. And it could be the smallest thing that causes it. And then you have to either pick yourself back up and get on your knees and apologize, or you have self-respect and you have to leave and basically recreate your entire world again, which is really frightening. And thank God I have a good family, because these people who go through this, especially in a work situation where they have nothing, I mean, no support financially, family, it's you're going to take the abuse and you're probably going to go back because you have nothing else. I mean, my most recent example is someone I consider to be, a friend, and I don't want to give too many details because whatever, it was oddly kind of public. Anyway, I had worked really, 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 really hard on trying to recreate somebody who had kind of, was given many opportunities in life, and just did nothing with them. And I came into their life, and we had a friendship, and there are many things that we had. There were things we had in common, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna help you. Let's start something together. And the way I interpret it is I did something that A, raised awareness to something really important, and B, maybe I got a little bit of, a moment where people were looking at me rather than this person, and this person, freaked out. I actually had to leave where they were because, not because I was scared, but I just don't want to deal with an adult who's gonna throw themselves on the floor and have a meltdown. I don't sort of like if I had a 3-year-old and they were screaming and crying on the floor, I'm not gonna pander to that. Maybe I would walk away and say, okay, when you're done, getting your emotions out, we can have a conversation. This person is not able to do that. So they ended up sending me these ridiculous texts like, you broke us, and all this nonsense, because I'm like, dude, we're not dating, we're not fucking, so this is supposed to be a platonic male friendship. What is your problem? What broke? It's like, sounds like Kaneki and Rizzo when they're hooking up in the car. How did it break? What are you talking about? What do you mean it broke? Anyway, cut to this person says, I don't want to speak to you for a very, very long time, and we had all these things lined up, and I'm not doing it. So that's an adult acting like a child, and I had to walk away. Now, how do you heal from all of this? Because I've had this happen to me so many times, and again, as I am processing all of this, I take full responsibility, and I think that's the first thing that everybody who goes through this has to do, because if you don't take responsibility for it, then you're them. If I blame them, then I'm them. I'm just like them. Oh, it wasn't me, it was them. Listen, I have been learning about narcissistic abuse for about almost 6 years now, and I've still gotten myself into these situations. So I have to take some level of responsibility. I mean, I take all the responsibility, honestly, because I'm in control of my life. So that's one. You have to say, okay, I allowed this to happen. You have to get better. You have to start really getting careful at seeing those early red flags, which now I'm getting much better at. And the minute you sense it, here's the honest truth. Ultimately, yes, you could be like, I sense the red flag and I am not going near this person. And yeah, you could live life like that. But in certain places in the world, especially in, I think, America, you're going to deal with narcissistic people, and you're probably going to have work relationships and some friendships with these types of people. You just have to know who they are, what they are, and how to deal with them. And basically, you can't get close to them. Because if you get close to them, you're going to get cut. So that's the beginning with healing. I also think a lot of self-reflection is super, 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 super important, because you have to start seeing the patterns that happened in the relationship, and you'll start to see the cycle. There are times where they're really close to you. There are times you don't hear from them. Then there are times they're really close to you. Then you don't hear from them. Then they start to put you down. Then they start to lift you up. Then they start to compare you to people. And it's just this, and so once you can see that circle, you'll start to apply it to different relationships and see, oh, that's what happened then. Or that's why you just start to have a lot of revelations. So I think reflecting is super important. And then from your reflections, you'll start to create boundaries. Okay, when I first meet someone, I'm not going to do X, Y, and Z. Like, a lot of things that I feel like the way that they test is I'll be like, oh, can you do me a favor? You know what? You don't know the person that well? I'm sorry. The answer is no. No, I can't do you that favor. I don't know you. I mean, you don't say this, but you don't know them that way. No. If someone doesn't respect your time, that's a red flag. And another red flag is people who come on really strong. That's not normal. Friendships take time to build. I think that's something that I'm even getting kind of accustomed to. So I used to really like when I would meet people, and I would get close to them really quick because I was like, oh, they like me, blah, blah. No, that's a really bad sign. Sorry. So I think because I used to think and be like, oh, wow, I had these really intense relationships, but it was only with a certain type of person or a person who I would think about a lot, and they think about the dynamics and the way things were going. Usually that person's a narcissist. Like, I have friends, we text, I hear from them, sometimes they take a while to respond, and it doesn't bother me. Usually that's a healthy friendship. It's like, they're busy. It's usually the friendships that you start getting hooked on. Why didn't they answer me? Or what's going on? That's usually a narcissist, because that's what they want you to be doing. So in the time when you feel like your whole life has come apart because this very big relationship in your life is basically taken away, or you have to leave, you have to start dating, but dating yourself in a way. Like, okay, what do I want? what do I want to think about? What do I want to do? Because when you're with this person, that all goes away. It becomes all about them. And I think you see that a lot in assistant relationships, boss and assistant. If the boss is a narcissist and you're someone's assistant, your whole life becomes about them. And I think that's the one downfall of working with, I've seen and have experienced as well. When you work with certain public figures, it doesn't matter how famous they are, because in their own head, they're the biggest thing since white bread. Your whole life becomes about them. And then you start doing things for them and trying to get them ahead, and it just becomes crazy. And then, thank God I got out when I did. But there are some people I've seen who were working for this very big celebrity, considerably one of the most famous people on the planet. And these people's lives, it's all about this person. Then it's like 35 years have gone by and they're still with them. And it's like, fuck. I didn't do anything that served me. Your whole identity becomes, well, I know this person, I have access to this person, and so I have access to this. But it's nothing because you've done anything. It's because you basically sold your soul. So great, you're at a fashion show, but you sold your soul, and it has, and they don't want you to get any recognition. They don't want you getting ahead. They just want you in their cave. So, if anyone is listening to this, and you're in this position, or you have been in this position, everything's going to be fine. You just have to start focusing on you, and I think that's what everybody should do. And that doesn't mean be selfish, and I'm not saying don't care about people, because then you're an asshole just like these people. But what is it that you want and that you want to do? I think that's super important. What is it that you want to do? What is your purpose? Because your purpose can't be someone else's. What is it that you want to do? What is your purpose?